All right, let's get right into it. Is all this AI stuff a real revolution? The kind that changes everything? Or is it just another tech bubble? All hype and bound to pop. That's the billion, or maybe the trillion-dollar question we're digging into today.
I mean, you feel it every day, right? The signals are completely conflicting. One headline is screaming, AI is eating the world. And the very next one is like, nope, it's all hype. The models have totally stalled. It's really confusing. So what is actually going on here? So to get some clarity, we're going to break down a great report from tech analyst Benedict Evans. It's called AI Eats the World, and it gives us a really solid framework for understanding these massive trillion-dollar changes that are happening as we speak.
Okay, so the first thing to get is that this feeling, this sense of chaos and hype, it is not new at all. In fact, if you look back at the history of technology, we have been here before. It's all part of a pretty predictable pattern. It feels like every 10 to 15 years, some new piece of tech just lands and completely redraws the map. We saw it with the PC, right? Then the web came along, then mobile changed everything again. And when you look at it like that, it's pretty darn clear that generative AI is the next big one in that line. And here's the thing about these shifts. They always create new winners. Just think about it for a sec. Microsoft. They were the undisputed king of the PC era. But when mobile happened, they completely, totally missed the boat. And who swept in? Apple and Google. They built a whole new world order. And that history lesson, that is exactly why the big tech companies are being so aggressive right now. And look, if you still think something like the internet bubble was just a bunch of hype, check this out. Back in 1995, basically 0% of straight couples in the US met online. Fast forward to 2020, and that number is almost 60%. A technology that so many people wrote off became this fundamental part of how society works. That's the scale of change we could be talking about with AI.
Okay, so with all that history as context, let's jump to today. Because right now, we are watching a super high-stakes poker match play out. And the biggest players in tech are pushing trillions of dollars of chips into the middle of the table, all betting on what's next.
In the amount of money here, it is just staggering. It's almost hard to get your head around. We're talking about a projected $400 billion in capital expenditure for 2025. And get this, that's just from 4 companies. This isn't just pocket money for R&D, this is them pouring concrete, buying up all the chips, building the actual nuts and bolts for this new world.
So why the fire hose of cash? Well, this quote from Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai just nails the mindset inside big tech right now. The fear of getting left behind, of being the next Microsoft that misses the next mobile, is so much scarier than the fear of, wasting a few $100 billion and being wrong. But the way this money is moving is kind of weird. It's almost circular. Check this out. The big tech companies pay Nvidia a fortune for chips. Then Nvidia turns around and invests a chunk of that cash into startups like OpenAI. And what does OpenAI do with that investment? They use it to, you guessed it, buy more chips from Nvidia. It's this bizarre self-fueling loop. And yeah, to some people, it looks a whole lot like a system that's just propping itself up. And you have to remember, not everyone's playing with the same strategy. You've got Microsoft, who is still smarting from losing the mobile war. They're betting the farm to make sure they win this round. Then there's Oracle. They lost the cloud shift to Amazon and Microsoft, so now they're just burning cash like there's no tomorrow to avoid being irrelevant again. And then out of nowhere, you have a new player like OpenAI that wants to own the whole shebang, from the silicon chips right up to the apps on your phone. All right, so that's the giant corporate battle royale. But let's bring it back down to earth. What does any of this actually mean for you, for regular businesses? For the real world outside of Silicon Valley? Probably the single best way I've heard to think about what AI really does is this idea of infinite interns. Just picture it, an unlimited supply of helpers. They're creative, they're full of energy. Sure, they might make a small mistake every now and then, but you can deploy thousands of them instantly. That is the core power that's being unlocked here.
So, where are businesses actually using this new army of interns? Well, mostly in places where a tiny mistake isn't the end of the world. We're talking about things like helping programmers write code, whipping up drafts for marketing emails, handling simple customer support questions, and, just automating all those boring, repetitive office tasks.
And this is not just a cool idea. It's real. The money is absolutely following. Just look at this data from Accenture. Their new contracts for Gen AI projects are skyrocketing. They hit $1.5 billion in a single quarter. This tells us companies are done just playing around with this stuff.
They're moving past the pilot project phase and are spending serious cash to put these interns to work for real.
So, that brings us to the final and honestly, maybe the most important question of all. With all this money flying around, all this hype, all this new power, where does the value actually go? Who gets rich? Well, the answer, it is not nearly as straightforward as you'd think.
Now, your first instinct is probably that the best model wins, right? The smartest AI gets all the users. But when you look at the data, something fascinating is happening. Even though the top models are all pretty comparable in terms of quality, their usage numbers are worlds apart. ChatGPT is just crushing everybody. And what that tells you is that, right now, it's not about being the best. It's about being the most available. It's all about distribution.
Okay, but here's the crazy part. Even with ChatGPT's insane user numbers, a whopping 95% of people are on the free plan. Now just let that sink in for a minute. We were just talking about a $400 billion a year investment in servers and chips, and only 5% of the users of the most popular AI product are actually paying anything. That raises some pretty big questions about whether any of this is sustainable. And that leads to a really critical question. Why don't more people use it more? The numbers show that tons of people will try a chatbot here and there, but very few are making it a core part of their daily routine. It kind of suggests that for most of us, AI hasn't become that can't-live-without-it tool yet. Not like our smartphones.
If you think back to older tech waves, the value was all about network effects. Simple idea. You were on Facebook because your friends were on Facebook. That created this powerful gravity, this lock-in. But with AI, that lock-in just isn't there. You could switch from ChatGPT to Claude tomorrow and barely notice. The value isn't in the network anymore. It seems to be all about who gets to you first and easiest.
So here's the big takeaway. The real winners of this whole AI revolution might not even be the companies building the AI models, like an OpenAI. Instead, the real money could be made by all those other software companies. The Adobes, the Microsofts of the world. The ones who figure out how to weave AI into the products that we're already using and paying for every single day.
And so, that's where we are. This technology is giving us a gift, a virtually unlimited, tireless, and creative workforce. A world full of infinite interns ready to go. So the really big question isn't about the tech anymore. It's about us. With all this new power at our fingertips, what problems are we actually going to choose to solve?